Okay, this is the March 23rd meeting of the Curriculum Committee of the Voorheesville Central School District. And we have an agenda here that includes a discussion regarding New York State assessments, course requests and class sizes for next year, and the curriculum process, such as the adoption of new text materials and new course proposals. We will begin with turning this over to Frank. Are you taking it from here, or is it Karen?
Well, it's going to be Karen and I together.
Okay.
Karen's going to, she made this wonderful agenda, so I'll have her go ahead.
She does. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
We thought it would be wise to talk a little bit about New York State assessments with the changes that are going on right now. So we wanted to do a bit of an update on the Regents and the New York State testing program for grades 3 through 8. And the first thing that I will mention is that you probably recall that back in February, there was a kind of blanket request waiver for all this testing to be canceled, and the federal government was not interested in doing that. But I think that I know that the state has asked for a little bit with more specificity for an additional, another request for a waiver. And while NYSED is not yet aware of whether or not that's going to happen, we should find out by April if they would accept that request. If it is accepted, there will be no testing for spring and summer of 2021. I'm sorry, was somebody gonna?
And that's no testing 3 through 12, by the way.
So I think I'm echoing, I'm sorry. New York State Regents exams. So the exams will not count for students.
Wait, are we going back to the 3 through 8 discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have that right at the end of this. Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Is that okay? I can skip ahead if you didn't.
No.
Okay.
You've got pretty slides.
Thank you. The exams will not count for the students, nor will they be used to make any accountability designations. And the exams that are going to be offered are Algebra 1, the written portion of Earth Science, not the lab piece, English Language Arts, and Living Environment. And the August Regents will be canceled. I'm just kind of slowing down in case anybody has any comments or questions before I ramble to the next slide. Okay, so students who are meeting the eligibility requirement may be exempted from the associated diploma requirement. So this is similar to what we saw last year from the state. Students who are currently enrolled in a course of study that ends with the Regents, and they're earning credit in that class, they pass the class by June of 2021 or August of 2021, they meet the eligibility requirement to be exempted from taking that Regents. That's the big one. There are other pieces to that as well. So if you're in 8th grade and you're taking an accelerated class, you too will, and you meet the learning outcomes, you pass the class, you are exempt from taking that Regents. If you failed the class, but you were in summer school or had a makeup program and you were able to complete that by August of 2021, then you would be able to take the exemption for that Regents as well. Also, students who previously achieved course credit, but they did not pass the associated Regents for that class. So they passed the class, but not the Regents, and they intended on retaking that Regents this year. Just that intention will allow them to have the exemption. Does that make sense?
So this is any student taking the courses right now can opt out of taking the Regents.
It's not opting out.
This is an exemption. So opting out or test refusal has nothing to do with what we're discussing at the moment. We're talking about is exempted from associate diploma. Those 4 exams still have to be given by New York State. Mm-hmm. Do we think our participation rate on those will be an issue? I probably think so, because, a 10th grader probably isn't going to want to come in on a Regents Day to take a science exam unless they want to do it. I mean, we want to see it because it helps us align our curriculum to our state standards. but the kid might not show up for the exam on the 10th. But right now, the 4 exams that have to be given by the school district are those 4 that are there. But
Okay.
they don't count towards, so this exemption means none of them count towards any diploma requirements and or grades. There's no impact. They're really just a diagnostic tool at this point.
So all right, that's for students that are fully remote though. Do they
They
have
do
to
not
come-
have to come in. No.
Okay, and for students who just say, you know what, they wake up that morning, they're feeling a little sick to their stomach or whatever it is, they're just like, this is not a day to take a test. Okay, so
Yeah. Again, these things they have no accountability or anything else, but for us, let's say a special education student were to take our Algebra 1 exam, right? Our special education students in general, we're finding that maybe on those standards, they're weaker. So having that Regents exam and looking at that score, seeing where they are, that helps us with our prioritized standards work. So it goes back to that conversation in the beginning that I had months ago talking about prioritized standards. But yes, if a kid doesn't feel well, they don't have to come in and take the exam. It has no bearing on their grade and or graduation.
In fact, if a student chooses to take the exam, the one that we're offering, and she fails that exam, she can still take the exemption and get that and check off on, yep, I've got that done.
okay, but as far as it being diagnostic, do we find out what the questions were and which ones the students got wrong or got correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
Regents
We
exams,
do that
there's comprehensive reports for Regents exams. I mean, they go over
For Regents.
standards.
Okay,
Specifically for each student individually, you can run individual student reports,
Okay.
reports by teacher, reports by grade level. I mean, the diagnostics that you get on a Regents exam are fantastic. I mean, and
okay, for Regents, there's diagnostics. Now, are we going to talk about, I don't want to jump, I don't want to be
We're
like
gonna
a
get to
trailer that
teacher
gives away all the good stuff.
No,
But are we going to talk about the way that Regents exams have from time to time, it's been a topic of conversation, the percentage of the grade that they make up. Sometimes they're used as a final exam, sometimes they're a certain percentage of the final grade.
this district has a policy, I believe it's 4%, but at this point it's 0% because the state has exempted the use of them at all. So they have no bearing, and Karen's going to talk about that because it does still have an impact on advanced designation with honors or the diplomas that students can get. So there is an impact, even though now they can't take Regents, because in the past, oh, I got a 91 on a Regents, I can get an advanced Regents with honors. Well, that's gone this year, so it does have an impact that we're going to discuss in a minute.
Okay.
I want to state though, when we're talking about Regents exams, we're also talking about the checkpoint exams for foreign language. Those are also gone at this point as well, because as you all remember, back in the day, we had Regents exams for foreign language, and then those went and became school-based exams, but still counted towards graduation if you needed them. Those are also exempt this year as well.
So can I ask a question?
Yep.
So we are required, the state is required to offer 4 Regents exams, but they've also approved a series of exemptions.
Correct.
And I'm looking at these exemptions, which are pretty broad. And it sounds to me like we're going to have very few students who will likely sit for Regents exams.
So let me say this though, the exemptions just are exempted for credit bearing on the Regents exam. This is where it gets tricky. It's not so they don't have to take the exam. It just means that if they do take the exam, it doesn't even count towards anything because you fit into these categories.
But they don't have to take the exam.
They don't have to.
They don't.
That's the trick, right? That's the hard.
But you might have some kids who want to show their, their strengths and.
Any of the state exams this year, they don't have to take, right? No one has to take any of them. They have no bearing on any of the accountability measures, but we're still obligated to give them, and we still have to make sure we go through that process. And it can be used diagnostically. But if a kid is only 90s, and if we only have 20 kids who take it, and they're typically the students that are on the top 10th percentile of the grade, it's not going to be a fair diagnostic for the district to utilize.
Right.
Correct.
Right. That's what I'm getting at is it sounds like I have a pretty small subset.
Yeah.
We probably will.
Yeah.
Can I just say that I'm getting some text that there's no link for folks who want to observe the meeting?
Oh.
Outside of those of us who are on it?
No, I sent the link out to our communications person. I'll text him.
Okay, thank you. All
I
right,
have one more question along with this. Now, if somebody does take it, like Karen said, and they failed, do we basically, we're doing a no harm? They can use it if they want it, if it helps them, but they don't have to use it if it doesn't?
Even if they take the exam, it doesn't count at all. There's zero,
Okay, so 0% in GPA regardless.
zero everything across the board. It has no bearing at all on a kid.
What
Okay.
about going on their transcript? Is it on their-
E for an exemption goes on their transcript.
even if they take it and they get 100?
No, if they take it and they don't take the exemption, then they get that score. But if they've taken an exemption, it'll say E for exemption.
What if they take it and they fail? Can they then say, I want an exemption?
Yes.
Okay, so it's basically their choice if their grade goes on their transcript.
Mhm.
so it's win-win.
I better double check if that first one goes on. I think it just goes on the exemption because it's usually the highest Regents. I will want to double check that for you, Trish.
Okay. It seemed like I was reading that exemption part and it seemed like they said it would be up to the child.
Yeah, if students take the, one of those 4 tests, they're still entitled to the exemption, even if they have, not passed.
Right, number 48. Yeah. The choice to record a score of an exempt on a student's transcript should be made in consultation with the student and be the student's choice.
Choice, yeah, you're right. Yep.
That's great. I like that they're doing that.
It's a nice thing. And again, even if a kid gets a 65 and they want to show that they did it and got it, it still doesn't count towards anything else, right?
Right. Yep.
Just,
What are you reading from?
The frequently asked questions for the state.
Oh, okay, I must have
I
missed that.
think that's what you got, right?
that's what came out yesterday.
Oh, okay, all right,
And Ben is, by the way, sending out the link now.
okay,
I'm going to go on.
sure.
Use of safety nets. Use of safety nets remain in effect for all students and must be considered in determination of which diploma type can be awarded, like when we're looking at a Regents or a local diploma. Students with disabilities who are eligible for the safety net option may choose not to use exemptions on tests to compensate for lower test score. Usually they do, but sometimes a student who is not interested because they want to remain in school longer and they're not ready to graduate, that's an option. Exempted Regents exams should be considered equivalent to a score of 65. So it's not added in as a 65, so it's not hurting anybody who normally gets an 85, a 95, whatever, but it is not counting as a student who has a safety net may only need a 55 for it to count, but it's not going in as a 55, it's going in as a 65, as a full credit pass.
This is the one where it's going to get a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Well
This
said.
is when we're looking for earning mastery in mathematics or in science. And you probably know that if you meet the requirements for an advanced Regents, you may also earn an endorsement in math or an endorsement in science. So you could still get this, even though we're not offering these tests. And this is how. So one way is the traditional way, which is you pass 3 math or you pass 3 science Regents with a score of 85 or better. That's the way it's always been done. But we know that last year there were exemptions and this year there are exemptions. So if you pass 2 math and or 2 science with a score of 85 or higher, and you've been granted an exemption for the 3rd math or science, meaning this year you had your 3rd one coming, but the other 2 that you took were 85 or higher, you could still get that endorsement. And now we do have some students who are maybe juniors who only passed maybe 1 math or 1 science Regents with a score of 85 or higher. And they've earned a final course average of 85 or higher for those 2 additional math classes or 2 additional science classes, then they can still earn their Mastery in Mathematics endorsement or their Mastery in Science endorsement. Does that make sense to people?
Karen, I have a question.
Explain that 3rd one again. I don't understand.
Sure. Let me give you an example. So if I was a freshman and I had an 85 in Algebra 1, and then last year I was in geometry and I had an exemption, I didn't have to take it because of COVID, but I had a 90 in the class, I'm going to be able to use that because I only had 1 Regents that I took. And then I took Algebra 2 this year and I have an 88. all of those three things were over an 85. So I can have my mastery in mathematics endorsement.
Karen,
Yes.
the last year, the school year that ended in 2020,
Yes.
the last semester was basically a pass-fail or complete incomplete. My question to you is the GPA at the end of the March, I think it was. March was when those grades got compiled. It was close to an end of the semester. Is that the cumulative GPA? Yep, Frank's nodding.
It is.
Thank you. Frank's got the 3 up. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we didn't.
It's not a concert moment.
Negatively, so it was the 3.
What is the advantage of an endorsement? What use is that?
I think it depends. If you're in a school in New York State that's familiar with the Regents and you're aware of what that means, I mean, it might hold some prestige. It's kind of like if you're, minoring in something and you did well in it, I guess. It's something that's relatively new. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. I don't think it's been too long. So I don't know how well known it is, but it is something that students like to have. It's another endorsement on their diploma.
So an endorsement on diplomas, Tim, it's really nice. The kids really like, hey, if you're going to be a doctor or you're going into these fields and having that endorsement, it shows that you exceeded at a certain level of performance at school, right? And the really nice thing about these endorsements is when you look at your diploma, you have not only your seal that you get, but you also have all these other different seals that show this, so it really just raises that bar and it has a demonstration of what you have done in your performance on those diplomas. So it's more than just a regular diploma. It has the fact that you scored 95s and above, scored this area, and it gives that student the ability to see that along with the on the training.
And show that off, yeah.
Okay.
And we also have the honors endorsement. In addition to the math and science mastery, students seeking the honors endorsement on their diploma must meet one of the following. This is the traditional way. You earn a computed average of 90 or higher on all your Regents exams that are applicable to that diploma, whether it's a Regents or it's an advanced Regents. You earn a computed average of 90 or greater on a minimum of 3 Regents exams applicable to the diploma and the exemptions granted for the other exams. Or, and this is the trickier one, for students with fewer than 3 Regents exam scores, because that could happen, you earn a computed average of 90 or greater for scores on the Regents exam that were taken, and then your final course grades and courses ordinarily culminating in Regents for which you've been given an exemption. So I do have an example of that because I thought that was a lot to look at. So if you're looking at that last one where a student has fewer than 3 scored Regents, we've got the English Regents, the student had an exemption, but their final course was a 94. And Algebra 1, a required Regents, they had a 92. Earth Science Regents, that's their science that they've taken, they got an 89. Global, they had an exemption, and their final course grade was a 96. US History, they have an exemption. Final course grade was an 88. You would look at those final course grades and add those to the Regents that they took. So I have that listed there, 94, 92, 89, 96, and 88, divided by the 5, and they come up to the 91.8. So that student is over a 90 and earns the honors endorsement. So a student doesn't lose out for that designation and that distinction because of the exemptions.
Karen, so just to understand that you don't have to score the 90 or above on all of them, you just have to average that.
Average, yeah. The mastery is the 85 or above. That was for the science or math. But to receive the honors, it's an average overall.
Interesting.
This is a big change in comparison to the way things were done previously.
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah.
There's a little more flexibility with it, using an average than using a required hit this point.
Yeah, I think that's because their number 85 is usually what they use for that mastery designation versus proficiency. So as long as you had to do that for each of those 3 sciences or 4 science, you had to do that for each of those maths to get that endorsement that you were always in the mastery level. And this is a little different.
I'm not trying to be cynical, but
Okay.
I have to ask, is the grading system as specific, as accurate, as rigorous as it would have been if these kids were in school, in person?
Yes, I'm going to say it should be, in theory. I mean, the teachers are giving grades and assessments based off the curriculum and content that they're teaching. So I would say their grading system is that. But in the end, the assessment, in the past, it was the Regents is the culmination of all the learning, right? And if you have a student who does well on a Regents exam, they're going to be able to get mastery 90, 95. If you have a student who does really well in class and does all the classwork and projects and project-based learning and gets 95s in the classroom, but doesn't do well on a Regents exam and gets an 80 because they may not test well, but they have content knowledge, that student's missing out. So this is, I see pros and cons of both aspects of it. But do I feel our grading is stringent and it should match where it's been in previous years? I feel that our teachers are comparable in doing that.
Well, these exemptions require that there be a pretty stringent grading system that's very specific. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about. If we don't have that in place, then these exemptions aren't worth the paper they're written on.
No, they're solid in my book.
Okay.
Yeah, my observations from my end, Tim, have been that they have been very similar, to parents, talking to parents whose kids have graduated and so on, have had teachers that my kids are now taking. It's so, years gone by, everything seems to be going along, just with different infrastructure between the teacher and the student from case to
And
case.
often more flexibility maybe with how things are turned in or.
Well, I mean, the good thing now is we're teaching to mastery, right? So, I mean, the goal is if a child gets a 65 and you want them to go back and redo that work so they have an understanding of it, maybe that grade now turns to an 80, that's not a bad thing. As long as you can show that that child's getting an understanding and teaching to mastery instead of just saying, oh, you got a 65 and we're moving on. Teachers have more flexibility now than they did in the past. So that's it for high school. So do you have any other questions on the high school region stuff before we move to the 3 through 8?
No, this is great. Thank you.
I do have a question. Do you have any indication that this is something that is going to change fundamentally the use of Regents going forward? The use of endorsements, the use of exemptions? Will this change the relationship between high school and matriculation into college?
So I will make just a gut connection. You know that the Board of Regents is looking at a change and evaluating graduation requirements. This could be the catalyst and to use that as a change. So could it have connection? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons that I'm not going to get into.
Yeah, no.
But definitely, I think this could be a turning point that, depending on whatever way they decide to go.
I think you're right. Thank you.
3 through 8 assessments. That's ELA, math, and science. States, should we not get the waiver, and we're moving forward, and we're planning on that right now, it would only be session 1 to be required, which is the written section for science and, the multiple choice for everybody, for math and ELA. And it is only administered in person and school-based. And they have given some flexibility, which means a longer testing window, not requiring to test the entire grade on the same day, not expecting that remote only students come in to take the test. If they're remote only and they choose and they don't want to, that's fine. That's not even counting as an opting out or a refusal. And it's not being used for district and school accountability.
So this year is very similar to the STAR exams. So we use the STAR exams as like assessments to
Diagnostic.
measure, like benchmark where our kids are. That's really what this exam is going to be like. On average, you're looking at an hour, to an hour and 20 minutes. It depends on the student test taker itself, really. Some students might be 45 minutes. Some students might be an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. But really, 1 to 2 periods within a school day if you're looking at middle school. And so very similar to the STAR exams that were 1 period. And again, it's just benchmarking really against where the standards are this year. So much different than what it's been used for in the past. Questions?
Yes. I see that they're really limiting these, they're closing them into a smaller window. They still do come with some stress for some students and families. And I'm wondering how we support those families, their social and emotional well-being, by letting them know what choices they can be making.
So as an end exam, the STAR exams, you know, they have an option, right? Because families take it, and we've already gotten test refusal letters. And I think there's form letters out there that people send in each year anyways. I see the same ones year after year after year.
The language is there.
Yeah, it's a form letter. I mean, we're going to send out a letter to our families, and it's going to state, you know, what the expectation is of the exam, what the exam's going to be used for, when the testing is, if they have any questions regarding the exam, who to contact. And so therefore, if the family doesn't want it, you know, they don't want to have the exam, or they want to know, is there a way for my child to get out of it? They can contact this person and get the information. So, yeah.
Will the letter include that kind of a language where if you're concerned about the exam, you're concerned about its impact on your students' social well-being?
We're being non-biased on what it is. We're not saying we want you to come take the exam, or we're not going to say we don't want you to come take it. We're going to say, here's the exam. This is what it's going to be used for this year with diagnostics. If you have any questions regarding the exam, here is the person that you contact. So we're keeping that a very neutral tone within what we're saying, not one way or the other. And if a family member has a question regarding if they don't want to take the exam, or they want to know what the exam is or have questions on it, there's going to be a person that they can contact.
Can we go? I don't think there's any bias in saying that if you have concerns about your, you know, the exam or possible impacts on social and emotional well-being, I think that there's no bias in that. It's just straight out saying that people are under a lot of stress, and we recognize that we don't want anyone to feel like they have to reach their hand out further for help than they would otherwise. Like, put the sign on the door so they know that we're aware that they might have some stress, rather than have them bring it up. That's my concern, is someone feeling so stressed that they then have to bring up the idea that they have stress.
So I understand where you're coming from, and respectfully, I will take that in consideration. But at this point in time, I don't plan on changing the letters.
Okay.
I think we have to stay neutral on this.
I don't think there's any bias in that. I think
there's nothing new about this. The opting out activity has been going on for years, and I think parents are well aware of their options, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think the younger parents are extremely aware.
Even older parents are not necessarily aware. And also, it's not about necessarily opting out, especially this year. I think this year is very different in terms of people's emotional, the level of stress that people are under right now is just surreal. So that's
I completely understand. But again, I think this is a decision that I get to make as a district, as district superintendent, saying, what are we going to send out on there? So I do take in consideration what you're saying. I am going to reevaluate that, but at this point in time, I don't plan on doing one or the other. I will contact my other superintendents to see what they're doing in other districts. So the message is similar to Guilderland, Bethlehem, and other districts around me. So it's a unified message across the board. And that's what I will do.
Okay.
I honestly see that we've done everything we can to avoid stress. You're saying you don't have to take it at all. And I think families know that. And then I'm looking at this list here. I'm looking at this list here that says this is going to be administered in a, you got as much time as you want to take it. It's only going to be one day. If you're remote, you don't have to take it at all. It's not going to be used for any accountability purposes. I think a lot of the stress that might have been associated with those tests has been alleviated already.
I don't know that you.
I just say I disagree, but obviously I'm not going to change minds.
Yeah.
I would like to support our families as much as we can, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, what does that mean? To
think I'm-
support our families? What does that mean?
It means make it painfully obvious to them that they have a lot of options, and the state has already said that there's no opt-out consequences. Like, we're not going to get in any trouble for being honest and transparent.
Yeah, and it's not that we have not ever stated you
Like, we don't have to
can.
beat around the bush. If you have a question, call, just say it.
So I understand your feelings on this, and again, I believe there's two different schools of thought in the middle of it. And I'm going to take both considerations into impact and look at both sides of the viewpoint. And then the information that I send out, which will be similar to all their districts in the area, we'll make that decision. But again, we'll take everything into consideration that you're saying.
Okay. That's
appreciate that.
yeah.
Is there, would there have been an opportunity, I know we can't do this legally, but is there an opportunity, would there have been an opportunity to offer tests of this nature remotely?
No.
That you just couldn't do that? The technology wouldn't allow it?
No, you have, in fact, you'd have to use one of our Chromebooks if you were doing the CBT and you were doing it, like you couldn't bring in your own Chromebook to do it as a student. You'd have to use one of the school ones that has the appropriate, I forgot what they called it, you know, to download it on there so that you can't go to other tabs or access internet.
Okay.
I'll just add in that we do just need to be cautious of we have third and fourth graders this year that will both be taking it for the first time because they did have it canceled. So we just need to make sure that those families know how to prep their kids.
Jeff and I actually talked about that today, Kelly, about how do we get that message out and have them understand that this is the first time because we were talking about two groups of kids who have never done this before, two families have never done it. So that was something that we were discussing today as well. But again, we want to be careful because who knows what the waiver is going to be like as well. You know, that's what happens.
The what? I didn't hear you.
Frank, we're having a hard time hearing you, I think. I'm sorry.
No, it keeps fluctuating. This is
Who knows what the flavor is going to be?
Waiver.
waiver.
I'm like, strawberry? What?
So the input keeps fluctuating on this thing. It's
Okay. Waiver. Okay. I'm gonna get myself closed captioning for Frank.
sorry.
No worries. It adds to the flavor of the conversation, that's for sure.
All right, so let's go to course requests and class sizes.
Yes,
I'll do the talking on this one too.
you
Karen.
got it.
All right. Again, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my computer today. So I'm going to try getting really close. And if it's too loud, just go like this to me and I'll try to increase it. A couple different things. So what I wanted to share with the committee is really what the expected class sizes look like now. Have a conversation regarding that, kind of where we're going, what we see. And again, these are all preliminary, you know, and understanding that this is not exactly set in stone based on our numbers, but here's what we're looking at. So kindergarten, we're looking at 5 sections of kindergarten next year, 18 students in each size. And then you can see straight down the number of students by grade level, the number of sections, and then what that class size looks like. The other is a special education teacher and where they're currently based on the subgroup we have and the current need. That's how many teachers for those students that we're going to be utilizing. If you, well, I was just going to say something that I might even be answering the question that you have.
I was just curious, we're just looking at this, making believe we might not have to deal with COVID in September.
That's the goal. So right now, even with COVID, if we had to deal with this, these are similar to the numbers we currently have. This doesn't include the teacher assistants or the breakouts or all that other stuff. This is just class sections of its own. You know, I mean, we might have to have, you know, a class broken up because we don't have enough room to be able to have all the kids in the same classroom together. Who knows? But this is budgetarily wise. You need to look at it because you're looking at easily $60,000 if we were to add another teacher onto a budget, you know. And that's why you want to know it now as we're doing our budget processing, not in June saying, oh, let's add a teacher when we already budgeted and don't have it. If you look at fourth grade, we are at 5 sections of 20 kids in the class, but we also have, that's a very high needs group. Kelly's shaking her head. And that's why last year we added that teacher to grade 3, and we're just then moving that back up, that class section, because we want to make sure that we're giving, the resources to those students to make sure that they get the mastery level that we want them to be at and set the tone for the future for them. So, any questions on this?
Quickly, so this is the existing amount of teachers we have now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Move to middle school?
Yeah, move to middle school. All right, so this one changes a little bit, so don't go by exactly where this is, because there's still a lot of conversations going on. It gets kind of convoluted. I'm going to be very honest with you. If you look at grade 6 right now, currently the grade 5 students, there's 4 sections. Moving up to high school, that we have down 5 sections of core. That's math, English, science, and social studies. That might not be there next year, just so you know. We might have 4 sections and then an added section of AIS, so support for those students built in. So that might go from 18 kids in the classroom to 22, 23. And then we utilize those teachers, instead of having those teachers are utilized as support in hitting those maybe at-risk students that they might be afterwards with the deficits that they may or may not have. But that class section size, you can't really go by that. And same with 7th or 8th grade. 77 students, a section of 4. I'm going to use the example of earth science. Well, earth science, those kids go to another high school teacher. So that science teacher may only have 3 sections. And then those other 2 sections, that teacher will then continue the STEAM program that we have going on. So there's a consistency of that program from year to year to year. So these teachers are going to fluctuate from 6th grade to 8th grade. And you're going to see a lot of fluctuations in what they teach based on our grade levels, because we're so inconsistent with the number of students in cohort.
Oh, yeah.
So I hear some echoing. So if I mute everybody, or if everybody mutes when I'm talking, that might help, because I feel like I'm yelling. All right.
Can you mute me, Frank, because I can't get.
Does that help? Am I louder now? Yeah. All right. So sorry.
Frank, that course that Shauna Worth, oops, I just, a few years back, is that still going on?
Can you repeat yourself, Kelly? Rachel, I'm sorry.
Shauna Worthley put together a course. I think it maybe was for enrichment or something. Anyone can help me out with this?
The computer?
It was like emailing, computer.
We want to bring that back next year.
Yes.
We want to.
That class was awesome.
Yeah, that's what. So when you look at this, the major thing I want to show you, and it's actually for budgetary purposes that you see, is you can see gaps in our instruction, right? And you're going to see the same thing in high school when I talk about that as well, is maximizing those teachers and maximizing those class sizes will allow us to be able to get more consistent with having these enrichment programs built in and trying to keep them from year to year with staffing. If we if you see it's 100, 100, 100, 100, then that changes, right? But if we're looking at, the lower class sizes, there's play that we have to be able to have with the sections. So we're having a lot of conversations right now about that.
This is really your last year with that play though, right? You've got big numbers coming at you. After 8th grade moves on, you've got 90 above for years.
But I want people to realize this, and I know I'm probably going to get a nasty email for saying this later on, is it's 6 through 12. And teacher certifications are 7 through 12, right? So if you have that freedom, that means that if I have a teacher who is teaching 8th grade, they could teach 9th grade if the certification area is there. And when we're a small district with fluctuating numbers, you have to maximize the staffing ability to make sure that we can give everything we can to our kids. And Kelly, I know this isn't anything new. I've said this since I got here.
No, but we just want to make sure that we're giving teachers opportunities to be, trained, if they haven't taught a content area or a subject, a grade level in quite some time, we want to give them time to prepare for that and, not put too many different prep on their plate at the same time that are new. So,
Of course. And we're also talking about this in the scheduling committee as well. This was another topic that came up when we were talking about just maximizing staffing as well. So, want to go to high school now? So you can see what we're talking about class sizes, right? I mean, 167, 184. I mean, there's huge jumps. So again, that's going to be where we are. Special education staffing, it's not for grade 9 only. You're seeing that it's actually, we're looking at 4 teachers across the board for the 37 students. And you got to remember, we're asking for another special education teacher next year to help with the needs. We want to be able to help the needs of our students. That's why we have another special education teacher. Those 4 teachers are for grades 9 through 12. It's not just, if you read it, it says 3 for grade 9. It's not that.
No.
One thing about course requests, which we just finished, and they fluctuate like crazy, just so you know, because kids pick and choose what their high priorities are, their second priorities, everything is constantly in flux. So I wanted to just share something that we're doing to make sure everyone has a good understanding. Sometimes what has happened here is, say you have, I want you to look at world language, for example. Right, is that the one, Karen? Yeah. No, I'll just, sorry. Let's say we have a student that we have a course request of 36 kids right now.
Like music in our lives, Frank.
Thank you, Karen. 35 requests. There we go. My brain stopped for a second. So music in our lives, for example, has a request of 35 students. Since our contract states that you can't have 35 kids in the classroom, then the question is going to come up saying, well, then you have to offer 2 sections. Well, here's what ends up happening if you offer 2 sections. And this is what I never have done in my whole life of scheduling. And I used to create schedules for an urban school district grades 6 through 12. Is you don't offer those 2 sections, because what always will happen is you always end up getting it where they break down, and then you have 2 sections of the same teacher, and it's 18 kids in one and 6 kids in another, or 18 kids in one and 10 kids in the other, and then you're not maximizing your resources. You offer 1 section of music in our lives at 30, and then you create that opportunity for students to be able to take it again, because you might need it. These might, depending on where those age levels are, it could be grade 9, 10, 11, 12. So when we do this, we have to be very careful with that. Same example goes with, sciences or all those different subject areas. You need to know how many kids you can fit into that room and then schedule it appropriately. Does that make sense? I saw with tech this year, we had an issue where it was actually, that did happen. And it went from, 4 kids wanting to take it down to 28 kids wanting to take it, which could have been 1 section. And then that teacher who wanted to teach an elective or teach another subject area easily could have been able to do that. The other issue that comes up is we have to start offering classes every other year. So if you have a class that has 6 kids in the classroom, you don't offer it, you offer it the next year. So these kids have opportunities for grade 9 and 11, and then we can start rotating our electives into our schedules so we can create diversity for our students. I just want to give a little insight on how maximizing the staffing works in that regard. And you'll see how that really will impact the last thing. Questions, comments, thoughts? Do you find it helpful to see where the budgetary concerns for staffing is and how it all kind of fits together a little bit now?
Yeah, it's very helpful, but it's hard to know. So this is all still status quo, right?
Yeah, so high school though, high school is difficult because you have to build it based on course requests. So last year we built it, but it was brand new, and then COVID hit and everything went out the window. So really it's based on what we have, but what will end up happening is after we have an understanding of where the needs are, we then can help develop the goals going to be is where can we put at-risk programs in? How do we maximize this and then develop at-risk programs for students who may need it next year? That's going to be the number one goal, just supports.
And those at-risk programs are the ones that we've been hearing about the federal funding for?
No.
No.
Well, the federal funding, like you're talking about the extended school day programs and all that stuff.
No, they were saying a certain percentage of the money was to be used to help kids that suffered the most during COVID or something like that.
We use our title funds for those.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our title funds and our like title grants. We'll use all that money to be able to support those students. Majority of it, right, Karen?
Oh, good luck. Good chunk of it when they don't cut it from us.
That happened a little bit this year. So
A little bit, yeah. Any other questions before I go on? Comments?
I'm good.
I kind of do have a question that's more general, is that one thing that this district has been very much prioritized, and this is like not COVID related, not specific related, is the size of the classrooms. And I see that that's something that we've very carefully maintained, you know, and attempted to maintain, not just because it's a contractual issue, but because it's a quality of education issue. And I just wonder if that's something we want to have a conversation about, if there are targets that are specific to grades or anything, or is this something that we all feel very comfortable about as a district, you know, from head to toe, or, you know, K through 12, et cetera. So that's just a topic that has always been interesting for parents in 10th grade. It was a very big issue way back.
I remember that.
I
remember that.
You might, I just was saying parents in 10th grade, parents of 10th graders.
But I got to tell you, that's kind of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because I remember that, and that conversation came up after the budget. Back in, it wasn't after, but it was during that process, and it seemed like it was later on too, Tricia. Am I correct in saying that it seemed late, like May, June?
Oh, it started early.
It started very early, and it carried on, the next year, and I believe even the
fourth grade.
Yeah,
Remember the conversation.
Fourth grade it was dropped so that we could protect a line of study, and then there was efforts being made continuously, and you know, at different points in the calendar / budget year, with I would say no success, no communication whatsoever. That was, so I just think it is an area that is important and is just worth us being aware of. So that might be a good topic for us to think about.
So I will say
it seems like it's already important as based on how these are being presented.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Agreed.
I mean, if you can see what we did in 3rd grade and 4th grade last year, I mean, that didn't need to happen, right? You didn't need to have 20 kids in the classroom. We could have easily kept it at 4, you know, but we prioritized the needs of the students of where we need to be. We budgeted accordingly to be able to hit the needs of our students. And that's really where it comes from. We have to look at where it is. There's going to be some classes that, I'm not saying elementary wise, but there's going to be some classes that can have 28, 29, 30 kids in it. And there's some classes, like let's say it's an Algebra 1 class, you know, or an Algebra 2 class. You can't have 30 kids in an Algebra 2 class. It's going to be very difficult to individualize. So, you know, and that's what we understand that. And I feel very confident in that. It's kind of been one of the things that I've done my whole career. Always happy to have a conversation on that, but I know how I feel regarding those and what we've done already.
I agree that these numbers reflect the values that we have in Voorheesville. So I really appreciate these numbers.
Yep. I think they stand.
I do have one other question. These request examples, the course request examples, are those actual, or are those just examples? Are there other course requests beyond those?
So I have all the course requests right here. So I have them all. So it has to happen with course requests. If you look at them, you kind of go through. I just, as a scheduler, I've done this my whole life. You look at those course requests, and you say, all right, what are my resources? So staff are resources, right?
Mhm.
So what is my resource for supports? What are my resources for math, English, science, and certificates? Then I look at my course requests, who's predominantly taught that each year, and then how many do I need? Am I going to have triples, quadruples? Is it going to be a singleton? And you try to really figure that out based on your resources that you currently have.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets really difficult when you have a course request where it's 8 kids in a classroom. And then in comparison to a course request where it's 106. That's where you really got to start having those conversations and looking at those needs. But that's what we do.
Thank you.
It's a long process.
These examples are some of the most likely course requests, or the ones that had the most number of course requests. These ones we're looking at.
We just kind of showed them to you just so you have an example.
Yeah, we just pulled a few just to
Okay.
talk about what, like Frank using the example of, geez, now we have to look at this. You can't have 35 in a class. What would we do there? How would we
I
work
gotcha.
this? You know,
Okay.
just to show some of the conversations that you might be thinking or.
So if you look at Regents English 10, there's 36 students in that classroom, right, that want that. They have to have English 10. They're not going to drop that.
Right.
So that number is probably going to be really solid. So I'm going to offer 2 sections of English 10 next year then, right? So, so that's where that kind of comes from is there's some things that are set in stone that you have to be able to divvy up. And there's other things that you can have those conversations and look at. And that's what we kind of just wanted to give you some of those examples.
Yeah, something, Frank, it's been a thing for as long as I can recall, is the block, the AP block for 11th grade or something. Am I?
Yeah,
And that's
I would love to hear the comment that you're thinking.
I'm just thinking that it challenges people and not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily bring out the best in people. It frustrates them more than challenges them to rise. It's more like, I'm up against the block.
Yep.
And I'm wondering how is there a way that a student could take one course and not the other?
So I'm looking at all aspects of the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing set in stone in previous years is set in stone for this year. And I haven't developed the schedule, but I'm evaluating all of it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to have students challenged to think harder and dig deeper. I think that's always a beauty of education. The question is for a student who knows where their strengths are and wants to push themselves, how can they take one path but not the other, since the courses had been paired, which that's what I was trying to say. I don't know if I expressed it clearly anytime during this past couple minutes. So I'm going to stop.
You did, and you've highlighted something that I've already looked at. So that's why I was really excited to hear. I wanted to hear what you said because it was my own impression of my findings of looking at the pros and cons of things. So it's nice to hear from a different perspective that they see one of the things that I saw as well.
Awesome.
It seemed to just create general scheduling difficulty also from listening to prior administration conversations. Like it kind of locks in 2 periods for a big group of kids that
Any
probably
constraint.
already know that.
So a constraint that you put on a schedule is something that has to be there. And so like, let's say I have a dean of students and I want them period 1 free every day. That's a constraint on their schedule. I don't have flexibility in resource. Because in the end, again, this sounds harsh, but in the end, teachers are resources, right? And I have to move them to where those resources are needed. And if I can't use a period, then that makes it more difficult for me to be able to schedule if I need flexibility, right? So when you have a blocking of those resources, it's a constraint. That's what would be considered a constraint. VOTEC, is considered a constraint because you either have AM VOTEC or PM VOTEC. And you have to have English 10 or English 11 in the morning, and you have to have English 11 in the afternoon because both of those kids need it. I've done scheduling a very long time, and scheduling is probably one of the most difficult things in a high school. Easier in elementary, easier in middle school. High school scheduling is a bear. But it's a great puzzle. It's a lot of fun.
It's like Tetris and a Rubik's Cube all in one.
Really is. I love scheduling, so it's one of my favorite things.
Cool.
Thank goodness, Frank.
Yeah, exactly.
You have at it, yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
like again, I did it for years where I was previously, and I ended up doing it for a large, a very large, in comparison here. So I had a lot of fun with it. So
And small brings a lot of challenges though, right?
Small does bring different challenge.
way more challenges. So all right, let's move on to the curriculum
Okay.
process. So a couple things that have been coming up that I'm glad that we talked about last time was the use of this committee and how we utilize curriculum. And, we look at the charter and we're talking about these things. So a couple things that we're looking at is putting a couple new processes in order for us. So Karen, I want to kind of talk about that because again, remember on the charter it was, hey, we're supposed to kind of have textbooks and kind of look at them. Yet you guys say you never have before. So what's our process here? How do we have a process and procedure? So we're actually putting one together. So that's kind of what we wanted to show you today. So Karen, you want to go over the next part?
Yeah, I'm going to see if this will pull up. So we have a draft form. We've worked with the admin on this as well as our department supervisors. It's still in draft form, but it's been so informal in the past. Tell me, can you see what I'm pulling up?
I got nothing.
I can see something on the screen. It says adoption of new text materials, but then the next slide is really little.
Oh, all right. Hold on.
Yeah, no, I don't. I see the process for proposing a new course, but I don't see.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. And then I'm going to see if I can pull it up. Can you see now?
That has a letterhead.
Yep.
Textbook or new text material adoption.
Yep.
Okay.
So in the past, there's been usually a conversation. Again, it probably it's probably dependent upon how the department chair or supervisor works with the teacher who's requesting some new text materials. Sorry?
Question. Prior to now, have we ever had a written procedure?
I have never seen one.
Okay. So that's, and a lot of districts, by the way, have written procedures on textbooks, especially when you're doing a large expenditure for textbooks. So this is really just getting us down to a written understanding of what we're doing with text. So go ahead, Karen.
Yep, exactly. So obviously there's some basic stuff that somebody would be filling out, sharing it with their department. This would be, first steps would be conversations with the department and with the principal. And I'd like to be invited in on that conversation at some point. A couple things that we have in here is the rationale for the selection, whether the text's been vetted, using the anti-bias checklist that Frank has shared with us, identifying any areas of sensitivity or concern that we may want to know about to have that discussion and think about in advance. Because obviously the teacher would have gone through this before proposing the book. Cost. And then for trade books, for English classes, we often use order trade books. There's a couple additional pieces that we are looking at putting in here, the literary elements or connection to a theme or literature unit, and that kind of a thing. And I just thought I'd bring this to see if I could get some feedback from this committee.
And I want to say the other thing is that way we can also help get us on a system, right? We need to replace textbooks. We need to do this. At least then we can start budgeting and doing all those textbooks and going through that process. Remember, textbooks is an expense-based aid. So we spend it, we get it back. We spend it, we get it back. So having a system for us to continually redo it and
More formal system that really gets us to.
Yep. And having teacher input. I mean, that's one of the major things is this is the teacher can request it and do this and go through a process so they have a voice in it is also important.
Can you refresh my memory about the anti-bias checklist? I'm drawing a blank as to what that looks like.
I know Karen.
Yeah, and also, does that include the concepts in the equity, diversity, inclusivity policy as well? Not just anti-bias, but pro
inclusivity. It does, yeah.
It's at
so maybe I would not,
sorry. Go ahead, Rachel. I apologize.
sorry. I was just thinking that I would want to see that it not just meets the anti-bias, but also promotes equity, inclusivity, and diversity. And also that this is for the K through 12. So when it says young adult reader, or young adult reader, I don't know if that, like, it was a scroll through situation and I was just like, wait a minute, you know, everyone's looking at new books all the time, hopefully.
Yeah, I can change that to the student reader or something like that to be more specific.
So the bias checklist has about 10 things on it. And it just says, our culture is represented appropriately. And it gives you an example, you know, are you seeing a Latino person as a doctor not wearing a sombrero, right? It just gives some small examples. Are all cultures represented equally? And literally all the person has to do is check and say, does this match it or does it not? Because right now there's no vetting. Nobody goes through and even says, is this culturally appropriate? There's nothing that for the district to even go through that. So that's an opportunity for us to go through this. This is actually the same exact form that Shen utilizes in their work, and the same form that Progressive Partners utilizes as well. So this is one that a lot of districts utilize for anti-bias work. But it just gives somebody a checklist to look at the material they have, because right now we don't have anything.
Right.
You know, and they haven't ever even used that lens. So it just gives somebody a different perspective to go through to say, you know what, it might not fit at all. This was, you know, I was wrong on this. And there's just a different ability for someone to do. It takes 2 seconds.
And, you know, when you're looking at your materials over the course of a year, you know, maybe one piece isn't doing everything. Like one of the questions on here is, does the instructional material include images of people with a range of abilities and body types? Or many different types of family compositions. Well, maybe this one story that we're doing isn't showing everything, you know, but when you look at a curriculum across a year, you're seeing that you're doing all those things. So it gets into a bigger picture. This is one small little snapshot on here, but we'd be crazy not to include it in when we're looking at new material.
At the very beginning, there were two choices. Does it replace something or is it for a new course? Is it possible that something could be additive and nothing is being taken out? But
yes,
perhaps it is a third option of, is this being added to an existing course, but nothing's.
I was thinking revised course. That's what I meant by that, but I can make it clearer. I can change that to C. But that's exactly what I was thinking.
Just speaking as a reader of that. But yeah.
This is strictly for textbooks. What about for online materials?
It's printed or digital material. I think it says printed or digital. So I think
you can order text or tech books now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was it printed or digital material? Because you could have audio or video material, or even software packages and art kind of thing. So you might want to just take out the word text would be a thought. I don't know.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, well, it threw me, and I didn't even pick up on the fact it said digital text. So it seemed like it was just talking about textbooks.
Right.
Yeah.
It's content, right? Yeah.
Right.
So anything can have content, though.
Sure.
So very cool, though, conceptually.
Awesome. Any other feedback? That's great.
In general, I think it's great to have a vision, you know, and be able to talk about it globally.
Yeah.
So I have the anti-bias checklist. I pulled it up.
Very cool. Karen, just one thing. What says textbook or new material? Maybe take out new text material. Textbook or new material adoption.
Or new material adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Something.
The rubric is from.
Let me ask you how this works. So you have a new book or you have some new curriculum materials. Somebody's reviewing those and filling out this form. And who is making that review?
That's a good question.
So the teacher has an idea for something that he or she'd like to add to, you know, their English class. And would start with this form and meet with the department leader, department supervisor and principal. And probably have that completed. And so if there are some questions or some discussion, why they want to maybe do a replacement, and be able to talk about any, you know, content themes or why this is stronger. Maybe it's just more, maybe they think it's more engaging for the student and it's replacing an older text that is less relevant. Maybe it's something like bringing in more diversity and doing something.
I'm not really looking for the rationale. I'm just trying to get the steps in the process. Who, when, where. That's
So
kind of like,
they're still working through some of this, to be very
Yeah.
honest with you. It was part of the conversation today. I do want to create a checks and balances within the system. So let's say Kelly brings it to me and I say, no, I don't like that. I disagree with it. But then she brings it to Karen and Karen's like, wait a minute, I do like that. So we're trying to create a system where it gives a viewpoint where it's not only one person making the final decision,
yeah.
but we're getting input together. Do I know exactly what that looks like right now? No, I don't.
Okay.
But we talked about that today, and that was part of my 2.5 hour long meeting with the admin team. We're trying to find checks and balances. I just don't know exactly how it looks at the moment.
Now, will this result in the Board of Education having to approve something based on a recommendation from you?
If it goes to like larger textbook supplies or anything like where we have to do large things, but no, not for that. We will bring it to the curriculum committee if it's a larger, like a larger issue. If we're looking at a budget expenditure of $10,000 of textbook funds, we definitely want to have that brought to the, the curriculum committee. In the past, we haven't had the board approve, purchases of materials or texts.
Right.
But as a curriculum committee, we should look at and at least have the conversation. Yes, it fits. Yes, it goes along with it. Here's what we're looking at putting our budget expenditure on.
Got it.
Not approval, but conversation.
Thank you.
Frank, did you want me to stop sharing so that you could show the?
Can I just ask a question? So is this only something that would need to be filled out if it was a purchase being made versus a free resource? Like, just, this is different than anything we've had in place, as we've said. So I'm just wondering, like, the rollout K-12, like, it seems to kind of make sense in the high school with your courses, but I'm just not understanding the full.
After downloading some worksheets.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead of things.
No, you're right. It's really right now geared towards middle school, high school. 5th grade does a lot of trade books, so you're going to have some of those things. But you might have done a book already, right? You might want to do a whole new book for 4th grade, and that a purchase of that new book. If it's like individual materials or technical things or free resources, these are the larger.
It's not for book clubs necessarily that you're.
For the teacher's library in their classroom, like individual book that you might put on your, have teachers have those libraries for kids to look at.
Yeah, not like free read books, not things like that, different.
Assigned materials.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Kelly?
Yes, I'm just wondering about but I guess we're not there yet with the rollout and how people will be.
We're not there.
We first discussed it as admin, then I wanted to bring it to this committee because it has budget implications and different issues that go along with it. Get your input and feedback, then go back and tweak it some more, and then probably work it with you and the building leadership to figure out how do we roll this out appropriately and communicate it so it's clear. We're not there yet. This is like phase 2 of a 5-phase plan.
Frank, there's an old management technique where you ask yourself and your team, who's going to hate this?
Yep.
And I'm thinking of this, this has got all the markings of something that possibly could blow up on you. And I'm just wondering, when there are complaints about curriculum materials or textbooks or stuff, where do those emanate from?
Parents.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought so. So is there any need for this to run through some parent group or a parent review or something like that along the way?
No,
I don't think so.
because parents have different viewpoints or considerations based upon their own biases. And again, we are not. We have a very, we have a curriculum that we're utilizing. We have standards that we're utilizing. We have an anti-defamation rubric that we're utilizing. So, as long as we're doing all of those things appropriately, we can justify it. To Kill a Mockingbird, I'll be honest with you, I've gotten reports, I've gotten complaints on that before in school. And, it's a national treasure. So it all depends on the curriculum. I have gotten complaints about teaching social studies, teaching the fact that most cultures. I've received complaints on that, not here, but I've received complaints on that before. So, no, we're not going to.
Well, I think that this rationale, that this document and this process will go a long way if the complaint does come through to say, here's what thinking went into this. We didn't do this haphazardly. There was a lot of thought put into it. There's a lot of good, strong rationale to support the decision to include this in the curriculum. And I think that will help you. I think having that evidence is going to be useful.
I agree.
And it aligns well with our curriculum, so we can see how it all flows together.
Yeah.
Frank, did you want me to stop sharing so you could show the anti-bias checklist, or should we just go to the next bit?
I stink at showing things, but just really quick, does the instructional material include images of people from diverse backgrounds interacting with one another? Does the instructional material include content and illustrations that reflect experience from diverse backgrounds? Include images of many different kinds of family compositions and socioeconomic groups? Does entry into this course and course requirements foster positive interactions among staff, students, and families? Like, there's a lot that goes into that rubric from the Anti-Defamation League. But it's just, again, it's a tool that we can utilize as a framework that we haven't had already. And it goes right along with that, with the board policy. That's it.
I think it sounds like a great resource, and but I think that people are going to need some guidance and some training on how to use it.
Oh, of course.
This is all very new.
Yeah, and when it doesn't apply, when the book fair comes through and you get some books, you're good to go, or when you download a worksheet or something, are you good to go? But yeah, and it was interesting when you were reading those questions, Frank, some of those questions, does it include a diverse family? It could, or setting, it could be just a group of people who in amongst themselves are not diverse, but that's okay too.
Not applicable. So it doesn't always have to fit into it. What you don't want is you're not looking for material that really just is grossly negligent on our part to have in our buildings.
Right.
And that's all. And that's just a conversation that people need to have.
Yeah. I don't think I was explaining myself, but yes, I'm just going to, it's all good.
Sure? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We're in one of those meetings where the agenda is deceptively short and the meeting.
I know, right?
3 items on the agenda, and yet here we are in hour 2.
I know.
That's a good point, though. I mean, you may, through this review process, and I do agree with Kelly, use this when you need it, but don't use it if you don't need it.
Exactly.
Let's let the teachers have some liberty as to what they need to use in their classroom. But maybe there are people who look different than you and me, a diverse group of people who live in this community who could be useful in having a review. Just take a look at this. What do you think of this? They may see some things that I would not see.
Okay.
I don't know if that's helpful or not, but if you're really trying to be sincere about, look, if we have implicit bias, we know it. Maybe you take a look at this, you'll see something we wouldn't have seen. We would like to have your opinion on this before we go forward with it.
So I have actually received some of those from parents already. There is a couple parents in the community that actually share resources with me, and they're of diverse backgrounds, and they share, we should be teaching this, or here, or what about doing that, or doing this. So I do have that information, and I do share it, but again, I'm taking all those things into account, but I do have that information.
That's not a bad way to engage the community as well, in a way in which they can be useful. They feel like they're being called upon to offer their advice and counsel on something that they really have something to say about. So I would encourage you to try to use them if you can when the need arises.
Okay. So I got one last thing, because again, Rachel said it's very deceiving. The last thing we have is just process for proposing a new course. This is really, again, this is just a framework. It's not set in stone yet, but kind of where I'm looking at going is, we want to be able to have new electives. We want to be able to do all these new things and getting new courses in and diversifying what we're doing for our kids and having it aligned to a good curricular vision. But we have to have a framework of when these things are done budgetarily as well. So this is what I'm looking at, and I might not be sure exactly where we are. In the spring, the new course proposal goes out to teachers, and they can actually develop it. And it'll have very specific things in it. What is it on the course? What is the content? What are the sections? How many teachers are going to be teaching it? It just gives a little overview of what they're proposing. Principals, supervisors, the director of curriculum instruction then has an opportunity to look at these things over the summer and say, okay, how does this fit into our curriculum? How does this work with? Go back to that teacher and say, you know what? Why don't you give us a proposal for this now? We would like to look at maybe doing this in the following years. Let's see how we can build upon this program. Then the teachers have time to be able to really work on a curriculum. So that following, June through September, they start going through how much it's going to cost, how much it does, working at developing a real sound proposal for administration. We then share that if that's something that we want to have going forward, a new course per se. Let's say it's culinary skills. I have no idea. When we want to do that, we have the funds for it. This is something to look at. Then we bring it to the curriculum and say, here's a new curriculum we're looking at. Let's have a conversation regarding if we all feel this is beneficial for our kids. After that point, by December, we should have that approved. Then we budget for that for the following year. Then in February, the kids then apply for the course. Then in the summer, we give the teachers time to be able to develop the curriculum for it. And then we have a solid course in the following year ready to go for our kids and a new elective built into our content. We don't have a process right now like this, especially for one that gives people an opportunity to really share some of the ideas that they have. So I think this is going to be very beneficial. So I just want to share your thoughts on this. Kelly, I know you and I have discussed this.
I think timing wise, it would be nice to see it sent out formally to teachers to be able to know that the window has opened.
So when do you think the window should open though? Is it, May? Maybe we should do it in September? Like I was trying to figure out timing wise of the window to even get the initial proposal in.
Well, I think planting the seed and then maybe having a fall deadline for submission to give people time, because I know the spring does get very busy and hectic within school.
I thought the idea was to do the submission at some point in the spring of one year so that you have kind of time to think about it. If you get the go ahead, could go more in depth in September. That's what I was thinking.
And I also don't want somebody to do work on a full proposal that we might not go for right now.
Right, exactly.
Somebody might say, I want to do a radio skills class, and we might say, you know what? No, we don't see where that combines. Not this year.
Well, can there be a two-phased approach where you can pitch your idea very informally, and then, or with a basic form, and then give the go-ahead to delve deeper?
That's exactly what this process is. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain it well enough. So in the spring, it's the informal one-pager, and then given the go-ahead, then they have the time in September to course map it, go through all those processes and move forward to get us ready in December.
There's a huge time commitment to developing that, doing the course map and the materials cost. Is there any stipend for a teacher who wants to try to do that development, or is that something that just teachers do because for the love of the game or whatever?
They have a year and a half, because after it's approved, because again, the course map doesn't have to outline perfectly. If the new courses are done, it's not like a course calendar or curriculum guide. They write that after it's approved, and there is time in the summer that's actually given to teachers to do that for new curriculum courses.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. That is a lot of work, but the map and roadmap, the little simple stuff.
That's not meant to be a big job. That's meant to be a for the love of the game type of job. But then the following summer would be here you go. You're doing this. Congratulations, you got the job.
And
Now go do it.
budgeted, everything's, we have exactly how much money we can allocate. The resources are already bought, and we have money that can already fund it. I mean, that's another component is we want to support these things, but we want to support them.
Plan.
And we want to make sure that we have the money to do so consistently. My goal would be to build up this every year, right? And let's say I have a teacher who wants to do this as a sixth. I would love to teach this amazing course. I wanted to teach this course my whole life. I've never had the opportunity. They're like, I want to teach this course. I really would love to do that as a sixth. Great. We might have the funding to do that. So, we want to give our kids and teachers an opportunity to really branch. And this is a great opportunity for us to do.
And Frank, it goes right to what you were talking about earlier with rotating electives,
So after the first box, it could be that at that point in time, somebody says, nah, that's a no-go. And
At this time.
This ends right there. But assuming it says, all right, let's play this out. Yeah, that sounds promising. Off we go into this process. And if I'm got this right, if it was now the spring of 21 and I was in that first box, my course would then be offered in the fall of 22 if everything went well.
Wait.
Yes.
That's correct.
A full year later.
All right.
So it's
Got it.
15 months
Right.
from the process from 15 or more months, or 15 to 18 months from coming up with it to when it's. And I mean, does that provide for enough time to order materials as well? I don't know what the lead time is on
Yeah, I think that should.
ordering materials or downloading books. Which then have to get approved, but the approval process for the materials might be a 3-year process. We haven't found out yet.
No.
That was for Frank. That was my gift to you.
And Frank, I got one other question. If I came at you in the spring with this idea and it was pure gold, and for us to wait 15 months, 18 months, whatever that is too long. We really want to get this going now in the fall of 21. Would that even be possible?
No, probably not. I mean, if it was, again, because we've already in the spring, we've already made the schedule by May.
Okay.
Yeah. Course selection's been done, budgeting has been done.
So,
So this is as tight as it can be.
But maybe you could do it as a club.
yeah, but yeah, no, this is really as tight. Because you also want to give things its due diligence. And what you don't want to do is, I don't want to give you, Tim, special treatment, but then Karen, Rachel, and Kelly, they don't have a voice to be able to do exactly what you did because you're my neighbor, So this is an opportunity that everybody gets to share those things. They're equally done. We do them each year.
Yeah.
And as we build our vision and we build what our graduate's going to look like and all the different components that we put in, I could see this easily growing year to year to year to year, and really expanding what our curriculum guide looks like.
Got it.
Very cool.
Good. This makes sense though, because we were trying to back our head on it.
It does.
Good.
It does.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on the agenda?
I had kind of back to the course requests and BOCES programs. Frank, have you heard about, I heard this on NPR or WAMC, the new STEM high school in Troy, where you can get credits to HVCC. Is that like a regular BOCES program, or that's a different animal?
It's a tech program, so it's a full day program where the students would go and we would pay for them to go there and do those things. So yeah, it's a whole unit type of issue.
And so how is something like that, or Tech Valley or Mahanasin, different than a regular BOCES, other than it's full day versus half day? But is it the same cost?
More.
I mean, full day would obviously be more, but like, it seems like many schools are totally fine with anyone picking any BOCES program, but then when you get to a tech or a STEM, like, why is that handled differently, I guess?
Yeah, well, I don't really have an answer because I haven't looked into it a lot.
Oh,
Really depends on program, what the offering is and what the cost is per pupil expenditure based on the rest of everything else that's there. So that really is kind of the issue that I would look at. And if it's $37,000 to send one student somewhere,
Right.
that's a large per pupil expenditure when we're a small district and we don't have that kind of funds in comparison. So that would be the thing that I would look at across the board.
And they said this new STEM high school was funded through grants. Does that mean like building it and starting it, or does that mean like you get to go for free?
No, it's building and starting it. It's not getting to go for free.
Yeah.
I am looking into that program, and we're learning about that as we go. But again, it really does come down to a lot of those other challenges and fiscal challenges that go.
Well, this is a P-TECH program.
Yeah.
And so what it has is partnerships with business, higher ed, in this case, I think it's Hudson Valley Community College, and the creation of this new school. The beauty of this thing, I've seen a couple of these programs, are unbelievable. You could go to high school for 4 years, and if you take the right courses, you do the right things, you could get out of there in 4 years, anywhere between 4 and 6 years, with an associate's degree. That's pretty amazing. Think of the cost savings you've had towards a college degree if you're able to do that. And because they have these relationships with employers, the employers kind of move you to the front of the line and help encourage you to move on with your college degree, and a job awaits you at the end of that time. It's been very successful in the places where it's been. I think it's pretty exciting, but Frank, you're right. It's a very small number of students who are going to be able to participate in this thing. And I think they said 70.
Is that how much it was?
Yeah, this one was limited to 70 kids.
70 students. Yeah, I think 70 students.
I think total, I don't think per year, right? So.
Yeah, I think total.
Right.
Yeah.
So with
Well,
something
it's not going to be a big program, but
is a family allowed to
for certain
contribute?
kids, it's going to be great.
Would a family be allowed to contribute if it's going to help them save toward their,
So
or that's not allowed?
So Trish, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I have no idea at the moment. No, it's still our funds. But I don't know a lot about it. There's meetings that are coming up regarding this more, so we have understanding. So I can't. I don't.
Sure.
I might have all the information.
That's totally fine.
I think the real benefactors in the other P-TECHs that I'm aware of have been these businesses who have deep pockets. Possibly the higher education partner, but most likely, like the one that I'm most familiar with, IBM was the corporate partner.
Yeah.
And they if this kid met certain criteria that they were looking for, they did everything they can to support that kid. And I think the costs were reduced pretty substantially to make that happen. But I'm thinking of a high need school in Brooklyn versus Voorheesville. So I don't know to what extent we would get that kind of assistance.
Yeah, so we do have, and I just pulled up because you're asking me questions. I'm going, wait, I know there's something going on. I have a meeting on March 25th at 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and it's a lunch and learn for this P-TECH program for superintendents, principals. So we're getting this information as it comes out. So I might have a better understanding for you on Friday than I do today.
I totally understand. I was just trying to understand the differences in general.
Yeah, and again, Trish, I don't have the full scope of it. I'm not as, I think you're more familiar with the P-TECH program than I am, to be honest with you.
I just know in our district before there was a little contention about Tech Valley versus BOCES, and I truly didn't understand. That was before I was on the board, and I just didn't understand why it appeared from the outside looking in that one program is a total go for it, and the other program is like, sorry, no. I was just curious in general, but you're saying it comes down to money, basically.
That, but also if you're looking at the Tech Valley program where it's a full program where it's another high school, they're not even coming to this high school getting the same program. VOTEC is a supplemental program where it's not teaching content, it's teaching a skill.
Okay.
That's also a difference you want to look at is
Okay.
Tech Valley is a whole different high school and a whole different way to model the learning. In comparison to, we have a model of learning here. VOTEC is a skill set program. So if I want to learn welding for 11 to 12 and leave with a welding, I can go there. Or aviation. I can't learn that at Tech Valley High School. I would have to go to a VOTEC or a skills program. So that's why you're looking at a skills-based program with those BOCES programs.
And I don't think that Tech Valley had the relationships with private industry, with higher education that this P-TECH program would have. So I think we have got different variations. But yeah, they're expensive. And hopefully it'd be great if we had one or two kids who could go there, but it's got to be at a cost that is affordable.
And again,
We
I
also
can,
need a process to determine who should go and if we can,
Yeah.
if we don't have that process necessarily in place. It is a very big budget issue, but it is also like a process issue that we don't have lined up. So maybe that's something to think about.
One of the P-TECH programs I visited was almost like a program for, this is your last chance.
yeah.
You know, these are kids that were just not going to succeed in a traditional high school. And they did have skills and knowledge, they're smart kids. They just needed a new they needed a new environment. And the P-TECH program was like their last chance. And some of them are really blossoming in that environment. But it's complicated. I'll be interested to hear what they have to say about it.
And Tim, that is my understanding of P-TECH. So that's the programs I've looked at are exactly that. They're more for your at-risk, last chance, kind of get these students into an opportunity. That's what I've seen. So that's why I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
That kind of
I
like,
think the corporate interest is trying to do something for these high need students. Oftentimes they're low wealth. These are people who are, we talk about inclusivity and diversity. This is a corporate interest in bringing that along and being good corporate citizens. I think that's part of what this whole P-TECH thing is all about.
Trish, you're going to say something. Sorry, Rachel, but.
I was just saying at risk in general, we talked a little bit about our at-risk kids and I'm just curious, I'm sure you have plans, but how we're going to help all these at-risk kids once we can. I mean, we're already helping them, don't get me wrong, but.
Well, I'm actually going to share some of that in the news and notes this Friday.
Okay, good. And I was also curious about, sorry, Rachel, like in a typical summer, if there's some kids that really need it and want it, we're able to send them to summer school at another high school.
Yep.
I don't know if we have that or if we're thinking about that or if we even need that, but I was just trying to think about at-risk needs.
Well, no, we still have summer school abilities, and they're also looking at doing a virtual summer school at BOCES where it's skill-based, so for deficits and stuff. So that is an option that's being created as well. We also have our tutoring program from title funds that we will utilize, for some of our own students, so we're not sending them out anywhere. But yeah, that is still something that, we could do that through the BOCES program. We have funds set aside for summer school programs already to be able to do that. So that's always there.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
That's okay. Mine was just thinking that it's 6 after 5 and we started this at 3:30 and I was just thinking about, we had this plan to meet every other month. We have a budget vote coming up and everything. I was just wondering if there's a reason for us to meet in April or are we waiting till May? What topics are in the pipeline to discuss? If that's something we want, it's not on the agenda, but is that something we want to discuss or maybe email about how we're going to determine what our next topic should be? Like if we have a big thing that we want to discuss or if we want to just deal with things as they come along.
Well, do you have a suggestion now?
No, I'm just bringing it to the group.
Oh, okay.
As a point of conversation. I mean, I think that there are always things that we that come up and that would be good to discuss, but I don't want to take people's time just to meet for the sake of meeting. I mean, it's always lovely to see you guys. It really is. But
let's first see. I don't know what exactly you might have in mind, but we have a meeting now, very tentatively on the books for May. But we could also have one, and that would be May 4, I believe. But we could have one in April if the group felt the need. Originally, before we went to the bi-monthly approach, we would have been on April 6th.
Oh, there's
not that far away.
May 4th seems like a great compromise because it's 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
Or a little bit less even. Exactly. But yeah, so I just wanted to say that it would be something to think about maybe at meetings if we have something in line or we're working on a process, you know, or reviewing something, just put it out there.
Okay.
Or if we want to set up the 3-year text and material review process for Frank, outline that over the course of the meeting.
That's funny.
That was good. I'm glad you got that as a
I was
joke.
listening. It was good.
It was just slid in there.
So right now, tentatively, to be determined, but right now, May 4th would be our next meeting. Am I correct?
It's May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you?
May the 4th be with you.
Perfect.
All right. Anything else?
I'm going to stop speaking because all my jokes are terrible.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
All right. Thank you, Raj.
Bye, guys. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.